Hi, babe. You're so good.
Looks great. Looks like
Okay, I'll hold it. Okay. You're so sweet. Hi, Laura.
How are you guys? How's school? It's good. I graduate in May. Soon, yeah. That's crazy. That's so exciting. You wrote a book. That's crazy. You wrote a book and it's all over Barnes and Noble. Like everything on my phone is like, I just talked to her for a little bit. I've only read Sarah's Underway Dedication, but I already done one last night. I didn't hear her. I just took a picture. Very excited. Stand in the back so I can get No, we're right here.
Oh, are you okay?
Sorry. You're totally fine.
Grab a seat. Yeah, there. Over here.
So this is the English cover, in case you can't tell. There's an English cover, there's a German cover. Hey guys, it's such a small world. And so usually after the bragging rights here, prior to that, it was because of the US, but because of the buzz, they so she's paying for everything. I'm done. The sweetness today is worth the
There are plenty of seats over here. And just put this one there. And where are our stars are right here. So thank you all for coming on this kind of Armageddon kind of weather event. Luckily not as great, but thank you all for coming and celebrating with our very own author. I just want to say tonight, you always say it takes a village. So, and here's Lily's village. We're so proud of her, and as is I think everyone here in the audience, but I wanted to introduce Lily formally, but also Laura Marx Fitzgerald, who is going to be in conversation with Lily tonight. And Laura is the author of 2 art mysteries for kids, Under the Egg, which was mentioned in the book very nicely, and the Gallery, and the picture book Wild for Winnie. And Laura's currently working on her first novel for adults, a novel of historical fiction, also set in the art world, and hopefully the next couple years or. And now we want to introduce Lily Braun-Arnold. Junior at Smith College studying English, and when she isn't writing, she can be found playing trombone on her school's wind ensemble and daydreaming about living in outer space. She worked at Watchung Booksellers in high school and continues to help out when she's at home on breaks, thank God. In fact, tonight I saw her inching toward the counter to see if she could bring out books. But The Last Bookstore on Earth is her first novel. It was just released yesterday. She also has major accolades. She got a Kirkus-starred review. She was selected as the Barnes & Noble YA Book Club for this month and next month. Also the Indie Books pick, #1 kids pick. Of course, Watchung Booksellers Book of the Month. and you will see some great energy between the two because Lily and Laura were in our podcast, episode 10. So, in fact, I think there are some people who came tonight because the podcast was so much fun. So, yeah. So here, let's give them a big welcome.
You don't need the tall chair, but I need the tall chair. It's so nice to see you again. We had a lot of fun on the podcast because we know each other, or we knew each other from around the bookstore, but didn't actually know who one another was.
Absolutely.
I didn't really know that you were Peter and Tim's daughter.
Yes.
And you didn't really know that I had written a book that you had
Well,
read.
I was obsessed with it, and then I found out that you had been in my house before, and that was crazy.
So the podcast was fun because we got to know each other, but we'll bring some fresh material tonight. But I think we're going to have you start out with some reading this really great book. I think everyone's going to be very excited to hear it from, but in your voice first.
First, I wanted to say thank you all for being here. I'm so excited to be having a launch at Watchung Booksellers, which is obviously the place that inspired this book. And that's just really, really wonderful, and to be surrounded by so many people who are so important to me is really fantastic. But I'm going to start, I hope you'll indulge me, by reading a little bit of this. It's short, don't worry. Just for some context, because it's not at the beginning of the book. So The Last Bookstore on Earth takes place a year after an acid rainstorm has wreaked havoc on the world. And Liz, our main character, runs the titular bookstore. She runs it sort of as a trading post. She trades books for supplies, and she sends messages for other survivors. One of them is the man in the peacoat, who you will hear mentioned in this. And one night, an intruder breaks in, a mysterious young woman named Maeve, and this passage is one of their first conversations that they have. But without further ado, I'll get to reading. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely. That much is true. Alone is a physical state, a state of separation from anything and everything that could possibly give you comfort. Alone is being proud of yourself and having no one around you who loves you to say that they're proud too. Alone is having nightmares and having absolutely no one to hold you close and tell you it'll all be okay. Alone is the complete and utter absence of the people who love you and the people you love back. Loneliness is hunger. Loneliness is a hunger for something you can never have. Loneliness is a hunger for warmth and compassion and birthday songs and love, when you haven't had someone care about you for such a long time that you think you'll fall apart completely. People come and go, here for moments and then gone, but the hunger has inched closer and closer to eating me alive. The man in the peacoat does not offer love. He doesn't offer any sort of antidote to loneliness. He just exists. He is kind, and for a moment I am with someone else. Same with the other people who pass by and stop at the store. Sure, I have contact, I see people, and some of them are even friendly, but I'm still lonely. There's a void in me that no one can fill by just being around. There's a void in me that I don't think will ever be filled. It grows by the day. Maeve pauses and points at a photo on the coffee table, the man in the peacoat's sister smiling up at us. She grins. Who's the photo of? And even though I know exactly who she's talking about, my eyebrows arch. Why does she care? Huh? The lady in the photo, is she family? No! The words leap out of my mouth before I can process why I'm feeling so defensive. But why should Maeve get to know anything about my family? Why should she get to know anything about me at all? It's a customer. Maeve scoffs. A customer? So you're telling me that this place is still in business? In this economy? Something like that, I grumble in response. Some people actually value the lasting power of literature, unlike a certain someone in this room who likes to break into bookstores and probably can't spell Nietzsche. Is this what your life is like, Maeve asks? Plenty of food and an open door for visitors? Her tone surprises me. It's soft, not venomous like I thought it would be. And I freeze. What? Every day? Is this how you live? Maeve repeats. I place my fork back down and look up at her. I mean, not exactly like this, not every day. Some days are worse than others, I guess. I pause and wait for the feeling in my chest to dissipate. But yes. Maeve stares at me. It must be nice. Her voice is monotone, like she's reciting a well-known fact. Like it's this uncontested truth that I've had it so much easier. Is that some sort of backhanded jab at me? Another one? Because after this morning, I can assure you that you've gotten your point across. You don't know I don't mean it like that. Her tone is biting at first, but then it's not. It just must be nice to always have people. I don't have people. They never last long. And when they leave, I'm just as alone as everyone else, stuck thinking about things I should have done, stuck with that simmering feeling of guilt inside of me. But at least those people exist. You have people in your life. Yeah, well, I never can get them to stay. Maeve looks away and my heart sinks. For a moment, I worry that I've ruined the conversation. Not that it was a particularly good conversation in the first place, but some part of my brain wants Maeve to like me, no matter how much I don't like her. I watch as something flickers across her face and she processes what I've said. She nods slowly, looking down. It's hot out. Not quite the gasp of understanding that I was waiting for. Really, I hadn't noticed. And Maeve laughs at this, even though I don't think what I've said is particularly funny, but I think it was a laugh of relief. I'm sorry, by the way, she mutters, for whatever you've been through. I look at her, trying to discern if she really means the things she's saying, but nothing lurks behind her face. No bit of malice waits for me to take her bait. It's okay.
I love it even more when you read it. You didn't read the audiobook, did you?
No, but that's the Montclair SCPA training.
So it feels like we're really coming full circle because we're here in a bookstore, and we met in a bookstore, and this bookstore, or that bookstore, I should say, and I sense that you've grown up in bookstores, in many bookstores, but especially this bookstore. And I was going to ask you why set your book in a bookstore, but I think really the better question is there any world where you would not have set your book in a bookstore? Did you have other versions that weren't set in a bookstore, and what led you to choose the bookstore as your ultimate setting?
Yeah, so I would describe the process of writing this book as writing 3 of the same book, meaning I wrote 2 really, really bad books, and then I wrote this one. And basically it was just me rehashing the same themes and ideas over and over again. Some people read some of those earlier drafts. I'm looking at you, Maggie Greenberg. And I apologize to you for that, but really I think as I was trying to develop this story, and I knew what themes I wanted to talk about and the ideas I wanted to approach, but I just didn't know what the right way was to do it. And I really do think the missing part of that was a bookstore, because it's this place that is inherently full of community. It's a place where people gather, it's a place where stories are told, where there's this sense of joy, and in an apocalyptic setting, which is something that I love and was so attached to, you need that. And it's this weird juxtaposition between the two, where you have this place that is full of warmth against this really desolate background, and I think that was important to have both, not just one. But then at the same time, if you have an apocalyptic setting, and I think this is something that holds true in any sort of dark or difficult time, books have a really important space there as well, in terms of escapism and returning to your favorite characters or your favorite stories again and again. And so I think that, you know, at the end of the world, people still come in for books, which I think is something that's really important and at the core of the setting of this.
Yeah, completely. It's the bookstore brings people together with this sense of comfort,
Yeah.
and then also the community, but also communication, where they're trading messages, or you become the sort of, not you, Liz, becomes the sort of default post office at the time as well. So we talked a little bit on the podcast about apocalyptic literature, which I know is something you come back to all the time. I've read a lot as well, and let's be honest, I think all of us are reading a lot of it right now. And I know what your personal interest is, but what do you think it is as a society right now that keeps drawing us back to it? Why are we all so obsessed with the apocalypse right now?
Yeah, I find it difficult to speak for the general populace, but I'll speak to some of my, at least personal opinions that I am not sure are popular opinions. I had an interview with the American Booksellers Association, and I sort of answered a similar question to this, talking about why I love the apocalypse, and the person who was interviewing me stared at me like I was absolutely insane. So, she like turned to me and she went, "That's not how I think about it at all." And I was like, okay. But I find the apocalypse incredibly comforting.
Yeah, I'm seeing her response.
It's sort of like my comfort genre. You know, some people will turn to romances, some people want to go off into fantasy worlds. But for me, you have the apocalypse, you have basically the worst scenario possible. The end of all things, and whenever you read a story that has any morsel of joy in it within that setting, that's something to me that's inherently comforting and hopeful. And sometimes it puts my, you know, art history finals into context. They can survive the apocalypse and still find joy. I can take my tests that I willingly signed up for. Yeah, but I'm not sure if that's necessarily applicable to everyone. For some, it seems eerily similar to what's happening today, and I think looking at characters and trying to find a path forward through fiction is something that I think a lot of people are doing, even if it's not because they find it comforting, but if it's just because they find some sense of similarity or solace in these characters who are experiencing similar things.
Yeah, I felt too when I read your book, and then also when I've read other apocalyptic books, that if there's a sense of stripping down to the essentials, when you just are thinking about food, water, especially in your book, clean water, shelter that's not being eroded around you, it puts everything into a very simple framing, and it also makes the connections that you find even more, the stakes are even higher for everything. So I definitely felt that in yours as well. So the apocalypse brings me to the mini apocalypse that we all survived, which was the pandemic. And I know that you wrote this in the pandemic. I'm so glad you chose that section to read, because that idea of loneliness was something that really came through to me in your book. The idea of loneliness, but also togetherness, and the sense of like you're even alone with people and you're grating on each other, but then when you're not together, you're longing for each other. And that all felt to me like something that resonated with writing, or, you know, with living through the pandemic. So how did the pandemic affect what was in the book, or even just how you wrote the book?
I think the pandemic affected the themes that I was concerned with. A lot of uncertainty about the future is definitely in here, and when I wrote it, I was graduating high school, about to go to college, sort of in the midst of all of that, and so a lot of it was about this sense of, you know, what happens next, and how certain can I be about what happens next. But also, if there's a silver lining in a pandemic, it was the fact that I had absolutely nothing to do. There are only so many puzzles you can complete and so many bike rides you can go on before you start losing your mind. And when I was a kid, I was always like, I'm gonna write something crazy, and I never wrote it. And so I would always just sort of run around and have crazy ideas for books that never actually happened. But when you suddenly have this expansive time, you know, school was cut down to like 1 p.m. and then we were off gallivanting around COVID town. And when you have this just plethora of time, you have to use it. You know, it's like, I have no excuse right now except to write this thing. And so it really forced me to have some discipline, sit down, figure out what writing felt like to me and what that process felt like to me, in a place where there was absolutely nothing else going on. And so I really do think that without the pandemic, like, I wouldn't be a writer, basically.
So was the pandemic where the first of the 3 books was started?
Yeah, the pandemic, that summer of 2020 was when I wrote my first book. And yeah, I finished it over that summer because there was nothing to do. And then every summer after that, I wrote something else. Yeah.
Well, thanks for continuing to keep going, even though you probably had other things to do by that point. I was also glad that you started reading that section where you mentioned the friend whose picture is up. The sister of the peacoat man whose sister is up, whose picture is up. I think one of my very favorite things about the book is one of the most incongruous things about the book, which are these little vignettes of different characters who appear throughout that have nothing to do really with the plot, with the main character. It doesn't further the plot along, but it's these glimpses of different people's experiences and truly glimpses of little moments that they had that they shared with the main character. So what was the origin of that? What made you want to bring those into the book?
Yeah, it sort of happened accidentally, the inclusion of those journal entries, because I was sort of struggling to get my footing when I started to write this. I wasn't really sure where I wanted it to go. And so I opened up the back of, I don't know, my statistics notebook or something, and I sat on the floor and I just sort of started writing and kept writing. And I wasn't really thinking about what I was writing. I was like, wouldn't it be cool if there was a journal and she was writing fun things in it? And so that got incorporated, but as I continued to do edits, it became more and more important to the characters. And I think my editor, Hannah, it was her idea to really put full journal entries in that she'd taken from people. They had been mentioned here and there were a couple of them where pieces of them appeared in the text, but she really said, I think it would be really nice to have a sense of all these people who've come through, just the sense of scale of the people that she interacts with. But also, we have Liz, who is such an internal character. She doesn't leave, she doesn't experience the outside world, and what she gets of the outside world, she gets from the people that she talks to. And so it offers a glimpse to everything else for a character who hasn't seen everything else. And thus it offers the reader a sense of everything else. And so each one of those journal entries really has a very specific purpose and intent of what did I want to show, what did I want to say with it. There's one that talks about the National Guard and people waiting for help to come, and so that sort of gives just a little bit more of what was the government's response? Oh, if they didn't respond, what does that mean? And there was another one where someone's talking about dogs and how their dogs had noticed the weather was coming before they did, and that sort of creates this framework for other parts in the book where they reference nature and animals. And so those journal entries really became an important framework for everything outside of the bookstore.
Yeah, completely agree. It gives you a sense of scale and scope, and and it takes you a while to understand what was this cataclysmic event, and so it's giving you these sort of breadcrumbs to it. I'll spoiler alert a little bit. One of my favorite ones, which was one I really needed to hear right now, which was a doctor who had his head down studying for medical school and getting through his internship. And then finally, when this cataclysmic event happened, he found his purpose. His purpose was helping other people. And I think that was just an idea that really stands with me in these cataclysmic times. So speaking of characters, I was wondering, as I read the book, if there are any characters in the book that might be based on any Montclair locals, or maybe elements of the book that were influenced by Montclair locals, even in your writing.
Yeah, so there are definitely bits and pieces and anecdotes of Montclair in this book, especially geographically. There's an Acme uptown. There's a hardware store somewhere that way. And so that's definitely in there. There are also bits and pieces of stuff from my family that are in there. I did push my sister into a radiator when we were 3. I'm sorry about that. That didn't make it into the book. And then this is, there are vibes of people that are sort of in there. I guess archetypes of sort of an amalgamation of different people that have sort of welded together to create an individual within the book. But also, where are Caroline and Evelyn? Hey. They started here after I finished writing the book. And so everything before was very much so inspired by my time here, but they had not been here when I was being inspired, so their names are in the book. They are two of the journal entries. There's a Caroline and there's an Evelyn.
I was wondering, I looked for you and I couldn't find you, that's where you were.
We'll show you.
So you're still basically working at Watchung Booksellers off and on, and there still could be an apocalypse. Might be. So knowing what you know now and what you've written, if you had to stock 3 books, if you had to hand sell during the apocalypse, what 3 books would you want stocked ahead of time?
The easiest answer is Station 11, which is my favorite book ever, and I think that's definitely a hopeful apocalypse. It's definitely something that I am inspired by in my writing. Emily St. John Mandel is just a fantastic writer in the first place, but it takes this very, there's room for a future in the end of the world, and that's something that I think an apocalyptic bookstore, it would be nice for them to have. I would also, in case someone was looking for a literary challenge, I guess, and this is my Smith College English major popping out for a second, and I apologize, but I took a class on Romantic era literature last year, and there's a poet named William Blake, and he is crazy, and his poems don't make a lot of sense. There are a couple that do, and they're very nice to read, and they're sort of happy and hopeful, a few of them, and then the rest of them are indecipherable, and I had to write an essay where I tried to decipher 10 lines of one of his poems, and it made me want to pull my hair out. And so I think if anyone was bored at the end of the world, they could have some fun reading William Blake and trying to understand what he was talking about. And then the third one, this is sort of cheating a little bit, but I would duct tape all 9 of the Amulet books together into one book.
It's a cheat, but I'm going to allow it.
Because it's a kids graphic novel series. It's one of my, I've read it since I was a kid, and the last book just came out last year, I think. And first off, the art, absolutely gorgeous, but it's very rereadable. It's something that, I'm not a book rereader. I haven't ever reread a book, but I've reread Amulet many times, and I think that's something that I could always go back to and find something new in, and I think that's important. And also, we need some kids' books in the apocalypse as well. They can't just all have William Blake.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Give the kids something to read.
Yeah.
Well, that was a great chat, as always, with you, but I'm sure there are also some questions in the audience, if anybody would like to ask anything.
I'll pass out around the microphone so we can all hear.
Thank you.
Anyone would like to start?
Congratulations. I was wondering if there was anything about this process of publishing a book that surprised you.
I think there are probably a couple. The first is just how many people are involved in writing a book. When you're writing, it's a very private experience. You do it on your own time, and as soon as you send it to someone, suddenly there are 20 people involved in something, and it's a very social experience, and you're getting notes and edits from people, and people are making beautiful covers and doing wonderful PR and marketing things, and it becomes a really big team effort. And that's something that's been really wonderful to experience, but also vastly different from when I was writing alone on our porch. But then also connecting with people who are reading the book, that's been really wonderful. Again, when I wrote this, I was like, this is for me, and I'm going to keep it forever, and it's just going to be for me, and no one's ever going to read it. And that's not true anymore, and that's been really wonderful to realize that people are reading something I've written, which is so exciting. So those two have been wonderful parts of publishing that I didn't really think about, because I didn't really think it would get this far. But yeah.
Hey, congratulations. So you're obviously a person whose life revolves around books and reading, and I'm just wondering if your relationship to selling books and to reading books and to pitching books to other people has changed since you yourself became a published author.
There's definitely parts of it where I now know certain people who wrote books, and that's very exciting. the social media is a vast and exciting place, and you make a lot of connections with people. That's really exciting. And so we've had ARCs coming in, advanced reader copies from authors, and I'm like, I know them! We follow each other! We briefly commented on each other's posts once or twice. And so that's been really fun. But then also just the level of respect that I have for everyone who's written anything is, you know, no matter what it is that they've written, even if it's something that I wouldn't personally pick up off the shelf, I know exactly how much effort and time they put into it. And so knowing that every single book on the shelf is someone who's put years of their life into creating that thing is really, really wonderful.
I can yell, it's not.
No, but for the recording, we want to record you.
Okay, so congratulations. You were talking about how long this took you. Are you starting another book?
Yes, I am. I'm working on it. The magical part of publishing a book is that the second book, you don't have to write the whole thing to send it to someone, which is really nice. And also you have an agent from the get-go who is sort of holding your hand through the drafting, which comes with its pros and cons. I'm also very used to being like, I'm just going to write whatever and I'll fix it later. But now someone has to see the hot mess that I create, and that's definitely been a process. But yes, I am working on something with my agent right now. I'm very excited about it. It's also YA. I'm not sure how much I can talk about it. It's more in the horror vein than the apocalypse vein. And it takes place at a historically women's college.
Anyone else? Oh, yeah.
Hi, congratulations as well.
Thank you.
I was just curious about the publication process, like your querying process, how long it took to get an agent, what made you kind of take that step?
Yeah, so I wrote, again, 3 things, 2 very questionable. And so for all of those, I queried them. And I think that was definitely a learning process for me. Learning how to sit with the rejection. I used to hang them on the wall in my bathroom above my toilet. I would print them out. And so I would look at them every day when I got up for school. But I think that was definitely a very important part of it, learning to sort of put yourself out there and deal with rejection, because that's a very normal part of the process and a very important part of the process. But this I queried in August of 2022. And I signed with an agent in December of that year. And we worked on it. It's for 8 months together. We probably drove each other a little bit crazy during that process. And then it was really a whirlwind after that. She sent it out, and I'm going to say less than a week later, we had a preempt on it. And that was really awesome and crazy and blew my mind. But
Can you tell them what a preempt is?
Oh, a preempt is basically to take the book off the table for other publishers. They make an offer, and it's basically early in the process, and if you say yes or you can't look at any other offers from anyone else. But that was really exciting. And then we worked on this book for a year and a half with Delacorte and with my editor there, doing more edits and copy edits and past pages, which are so exciting and new and unfamiliar, where they say you used a comma wrong 793 times, and you go, I'm so sorry. And they say every time you were supposed to say toward, you said towards, and that's not a word. And so that was definitely an exciting part of the process. But also you get to see your book in book pages, and so that's wonderful as well. And then it sort of disappears from your hands for a long time. And production wizards work their magic on it and find it and make it look pretty and gorgeous. And then suddenly it appears on your doorstep and you go, oh my gosh, I thought we were lying this whole time and making it up. It's real. That's my nutshell publication process. Yeah.
Lily, what was the biggest change your agent had or impact you wanted to make? And then what was the biggest change or impact your editor had?
My agent, we rewrote the whole ending of this book. It did not end the way that it currently ends. It ended with a crazy fire and the bookstore burning down. Sorry, Margo. And so, but it was and it turned into like this community rebuilding effort. That was how it initially ended, but I realized it's really a story about these two girls together, and it's about their relationship, and so it should really be, it should really follow them at the end and be a little bit more closed in. And then with my editor, obviously the journal entries were something that I did with her, which was really wonderful. And then also there was a lot of stuff about Liz and her sister that was added with my editor. She just wanted a little bit more there, and I'm very happy about that. So, because it really is a book about sisters, a lot of it. And so it was nice to have that extra sort of context for their relationship. Yeah.
Hello, congratulations. You mentioned your love for the apocalypse. Do you have any other like apocalyptic media recommendations, other books, movies, films, TV shows?
You're like an audience plan. Absolutely. Books. I just read the first book in the Silo series by Hugh Howey, and that was great. That was fun. I think it's a TV show as well. I'm a ride or die for The 100. Which I binge watched during COVID. It's the best, worst show ever created. You watch it and you go, how did this go on TV? And you also go, I love it, I can't turn away. I've seen it like 7 times, it's so bad. This Is How You Lose the Time War is a great, great book. I don't know if it's necessarily apocalyptic, but it's in that vein, and so I'll give it a pass in that direction as well. And Severance by Ling Ma is also fantastic. That's my nutshell apocalypse recommendations. But yeah. And Station 11. Always Station 11.
Hi, Lily.
Hi, Katie.
I was just wondering at what point you realized, oh, my book will be published and I will be a published author and people are going to buy it and read it. Was it when you got a cover, when it was sold to the publisher?
I think the lie answer would be like, oh, I knew as soon as I sold it. But I remember sitting, I was in Montclair, and I was with a friend when I got the email saying that there was interest. And I remember she looked at me and she goes, someone's gonna make fan fiction about this. And that was crazy. And I was like, I don't even want to think about that. And so that was like a moment of, oh, this is gonna go out in the world. But also, in a broader sense, I think definitely holding the ARCs in my hand was a big moment. I was like, this is a physical book. I was in Boston when they arrived and I got the UPS tracking notification saying there was a box from Penguin Random House arriving in my house. And I took the train back that night so that I could be there to open them. And it was really nice, and I got to mail copies to my aunts and cousins, my aunt in Alaska and my other aunt and cousin in California. And knowing that they would be able to read it was also wonderful. And I think that was the moment where I was like, this is real. And holding it in my hands was really wonderful.
That's great. Yep.
Hi.
Hello.
Congratulations. I have a question, or maybe two, about the cover. How many versions of the cover did you see before you landed on this one? And how different is it from, or how similar is it to what you imagined it would be?
So this is very similar in a lot of ways to the original cover that I got. You actually get quite a bit of input into your cover. They let me send a Pinterest board, which was very exciting. I was like, I have a Pinterest board already made for this occasion. You don't even have to ask me. I'll send it. And that was really wonderful. And they ask you all sorts of questions. What are important figures or themes? What 3 words would you want your cover to evoke? And so you definitely have a lot of input from the get-go. And so when something lands in your inbox, you're like, oh, yes, this is the vision I had. But when it arrived, it was very, very similar to this. I think text layout changed, and all that beautiful burning paper was added. And they put, this is a fun fact, the text on the flowers is text from the book. Ray Chappelle is the cover designer, and he went in and he put the text from the book, but actually what I read is on one of the flowers. And so I got to pick my favorite parts of the book and they slapped them on those flowers, and that was really awesome. And so this is, and I also, same thing with my UK cover, they hired an illustrator to do that one, Hugo Vera, and it's gorgeous, and they sent me a sketch of it and was like, does this seem good? And I was like, perfect, do it! And so it basically turned out exactly like what they sent me in both cases. Yeah.
We have one more.
Hi, Lily. Lily, you are what you are because of what you have been, right? What is your idea of the relationship between nature and nurture, between your DNA and the way your life, such as the one I'm sitting next to, had on your life, and why you are what you are today?
I think I definitely come from a very literary family, a family that reads a lot and read to me a lot. A lot of my reading voice comes from my dad's reading voice, except when he reads out loud, first off he has voices for all the characters, and he also reads very slowly, and he goes, girls, do you know what that word means? And then drove me a little bit crazy when I was little. I was like, get to the point, I want to know what happened. But no, I definitely grew up surrounded by books and surrounded by literature, and when I was in school, my dad would edit my essays with a red pen, because he'd be like, well, we need, and so when I write, I hear his voice in the back of my head being like, Liz, comma. And so in both cases, sort of my parents' love for writing, and it was just always something that was very important in my house, and so I think that turned into this in a very big way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Any last questions while we have Lily here in our midst? What?
I have one.
Oh, yes.
Congratulations, Lily. We are all in this room so proud of you. Oh my God, I've known Lily. I'm not supposed to get sentimental. But my question, Lily, is I see some of the younger Lilies here. And what would your advice be if they wanted to do or publish a book? Because I know it's not easy to do, obviously. Look how many books are in the bookstores. So, this is not supposed to be a sad question. So, I'm just so proud of you. And congratulations to her parents and her sister B. But yeah, what would your advice be for actually anybody in the room? But I see a lot of Lilies here. And I know they're probably inspired, and they probably may want to do this someday. So.
I think my main piece of advice for writing is to tell people about it. And that's a very scary thing to do, to taking something from a small morsel in your head to being something that you share with the world. But I think tell your best friend, tell your parents, tell your arch nemesis. The more you hate them, the better. Because if you have someone going, hey, how's that writing thing going? You will write. Especially if you hate them. And so I think just sharing your work with the world without fear, it's a very scary process, but also a very important process, part of the process. And so once you sort of open those floodgates, you can't close them again. And but yeah, open them. We want to read your writing. We want to see your work from more young people. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Laura, what a great conversation and what great inspiration for all of us, young and of a certain age. But this has just been wonderful. And I know everybody wants to have a chance to get signed copies, and also, and then we also have some wonderful refreshments thanks to the dads, and a cake with the UK cover because, yes, very colorful. So please enjoy, but we're going to pull up these chairs first, so you can have a line here for Lily to sign. Thank you all for coming tonight.
Different covers in each one, and also sometimes they have to change the title. Like one of Emily Heather's books is a different title.
When you get out of the way.
Alright, you know what?
What happened to it?
It disappeared. It always does.
The first part's upside down because someone knocked it over.
Of course.
And I went over to check and I was like, oh, that's nice. That's great.
As long as the whole thing wasn't upside down, you're all good.